Story 1, Behind the Steam, submitted by Niana. I'd gone to one of those public baths, the kind with the steam rooms and saunas, a place to relax and rejuvenate. My friend had gifted me a free day pass, saying it was the best place in town. The bath had a very old world charm to it, with high ceilings, faded tiles, and creaky wooden benches. It wasn't as modern as the places I was used to, but there was something authentic about it. There were only a few other women there, all much older than me. The soft hum of quiet conversations and the distant sound of water gently splashing was oddly soothing. After taking a quick shower, I entered one of the steam rooms. The heavy wooden door closed behind me with a soft thud, encasing me in a world of dense steam. It felt like entering another realm, where shapes and sounds were distorted. As I settled down on a bench, my eyes started adjusting. The room wasn't entirely empty. Two other women were on the other side, speaking in low whispers. Their conversation was muted, and I couldn't make out the words. But I wasn't trying to eavesdrop either. I was about to close my eyes when I noticed a shadowy figure seated at the farthest corner of the room. It was a woman, her face hidden behind her long, wet hair, which clung to her shoulders and back. I thought it was odd that she chose the corner where the steam was the densest, making her invisible. Trying not to stare, I focused on relaxing. The heat was intense, and I took deep breaths, hoping to ease the tension in my muscles. I must have lost the track of time, because the next thing I remember is the steam started to dissipate as the system cycled off. As the room cleared, I glanced at the corner again. The woman was still there, but now she was staring at me. Her eyes, piercing and unnaturally bright in the dim room, held my gaze. She wasn't blinking. Her lips, pale and slightly parted, began to move, forming silent words. It wasn't a conversation with me. She was mouthing something repeatedly, almost like a silent chant. I was thoroughly unsettled. I felt the pressure in the room, like the air had thickened, but there was no mist left. The other two women were gone, leaving just the two of us in the small, enclosed space. Then, without warning, she stood up. Her movements were unnaturally swift. I blinked, and she was suddenly at the door, her hand on the handle, still staring at me. She mouthed something one last time, something I couldn't understand, before slowly stepping out and closing the door behind her. I was frozen in place, my body refusing to move. After what felt like an eternity, I got up and left the steam room and quickly showered. I didn't run into that woman again, and honestly, I'm grateful for that. When I reached the front desk, I casually asked the receptionist about the woman, trying to be nonchalant. The receptionist looked genuinely confused, saying that she didn't recall anyone like that entering or leaving recently. Story 2, The Steam Room Stranger, submitted by Raul. So my girlfriend and I thought it'd be a fun date idea. Neither of us had been to one, and she found this beautiful yet somewhat old public bath in town. It was less crowded than expected, probably because it was a weekday evening. There were a couple of pools, and then the steam room. You know, the one where it's all steamy and you can barely see your feet in front of you. That one. She wanted to check out the steam room first, so she headed there while I was still figuring out where to put our belongings. But by the time I reached the entrance of the steam pool, she should have already been inside. The foggy mist from the steam room was thick, and the visibility was pretty poor. It felt like walking into a cloud. I could barely make out any details, but I did spot a silhouette of a young woman seated alone on the far end. Given the circumstances, I just assumed it was her. I walked over, feeling my way around, and took a seat right next to her. Wanting to enjoy the experience, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and just tried to relax. A few seconds later, I felt a hand resting on my shoulder. It was gentle, so I thought it was just a sweet gesture from my girlfriend. But then, the hand started caressing my shoulder, moving up and down. It felt a little intimate, and I remember thinking, she's being oddly touchy today. But the weird part came next. As I took a deep breath in, this absolutely foul smell hit my nostrils. Imagine the smell of old, wet clothes combined with a sharp metallic scent. It made me want to gag. Still, I kept my eyes closed, figuring maybe the steam room had a particular smell I wasn't aware of. However, things took a turn for the bizarre. There was this sudden loud splash of water like someone jumped in a pool. It startled me. I opened my eyes, and to my horror, I wasn't seated to my girlfriend. This woman, her hair drenched, her skin pale and wrinkled, stared at me with wide eyes. She looked nothing like my girlfriend. The unease that washed over me was hard to describe. Almost instantly, another splash sounded behind me, and I turned to see my actual girlfriend stepping into the steam room. She looked at me confused and a little irritated and said, "Why'd you leave me in the dressing room?" I glanced back at the spot next to me, but the woman was gone, just completely vanished. Not even sure how to react, my girlfriend noticed my pale face and asked if I was okay. I simply nodded, not wanting to freak her out. We decided to leave shortly after, and I never saw that woman again. What strikes me as even more bizarre, the staff mentioned that apart from us, there were no other young women at the bathhouse that evening. Story 3, Eyes Through the Steam, submitted by Tara. A couple of months ago, I decided to treat myself to a day at this fancy public bathhouse downtown. You know the kind. Mosaic tiled floors, steam rising from the surface of warm pools, and low ambient lighting giving off those peaceful vibes. It's where people go to disconnect from the world, right? The moment I walked in, the murmur of the voices and the gentle echoes of the water drops provided that immediate relaxation feel. There were a few folks around, some lounging, others talking in hushed tones, provided that immediate relaxation feel, and the occasional giggle from the corner. Normal, right? I settled into one of the more secluded pools in the corner, hoping just to lie back and get lost in my thoughts. Not too long after, another woman walked in. She was probably in her mid-30s, short dark hair, wearing a simple white robe, and had these intense blue eyes that just kind of pierced right through you. She smiled at me, which I returned, and then she settled into the pool directly across from mine. I tried not to pay her any attention, but there was something about the way she stared off into the distance, almost lost, that caught my attention. Occasionally, she whispered to herself, just low enough that I couldn't catch what she was saying. Curiosity got the best of me, and I started to lean in a bit, attempting to catch snippets of her mumbling. It was all disjointed. Words and phrases like, "they can't find out," and "never go back," filled the air. I was trying to convince myself that maybe she was just practicing some sort of weird mantra or mindfulness exercise. But then, things took a turn. She suddenly looked right at me, eyes wide, and said clearly, "Do you see them too?" I froze. What the hell is she talking about? There was no one else around. The steam had grown thicker, making the edges of the room a bit hazy, but there was certainly no one else in our vicinity. I shook my head, trying to sound as nonchalant as possible. See who? She tilted her head, eyes still locked on mine. The people watching us. My stomach sank. There were chills, but not the ghostly kind. More like the feeling when you know you're being watched. I looked around again, trying to see through the steam, but still saw no one. I don't know what you're talking about, I whispered back. The woman's voice trembled. They've been following me everywhere. I thought this place was safe. I thought they couldn't get in here. I pulled myself from the pool, water dripping from my skin, making me feel even more exposed. I reached for my towel, not taking my eyes off her. Look, I don't know what you're talking about, but maybe you should leave. Get some help or something. She simply stared at the water, her whispers starting up again. I didn't wait around. I dressed as quickly as possible, half expecting to feel a hand on my shoulder at the time. Once dressed, I rushed out, only taking a second to glance back. The woman was gone. The pool she was in, empty, and the steam was clearing, and the room looked as peaceful as before. I never found out who she was, or what she was running from, and I don't think I want to.